I'd like to start by asking Mr. Godrej, you know, of course your group has many wonderful companies, which are true leaders, as Raamdeo said. We don't appreciate some of them simply because they're not listed. But Godrej and Boyce, I think, is a truly outstanding company. There are a bunch of other companies. And the fact that so many international leaders have come to partner with you is suggestive of the fact that you run a wonderful ship. Now, to you, how important is this thing of having a sense of purpose? How much does it drive the way you do business? Is it important? Or do you think if you didn't have as deep-rooted a sense of purpose as appears to be the case to the external observer, it wouldn't make much of a difference?
I think it's extremely important. I think it drives success in many businesses very well. And a sense of purpose, of course, the definitions can vary, I think is very critical to drive great success and great accomplishment. Now, there are different ways of going about it. But I think once you define how you are going to do it and you propagate it amongst the people who work
for you, yeah.
I think it works extremely well.
And that's what creates the culture.
Absolutely.
The translation from mission or purpose to culture.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I think you hit the two very important points that create for great success.
These aren't original ideas. These are actually written in a book called What It Takes. So I'm a thief and I must be excused or pardoned for stealing. But I thought it's instructive in the since we have, two of you here to use this. Sir, one thing I'd like to ask you as a sort of add-on to what you said. How does someone sitting here in this audience, or let's say analysts or people who interact with Godrej Consumer or the Godrej Group, financial analysts, what are the cues you think they could use to determine that here is a company that is very purposeful, that is driven by a set of beliefs that are very important? How do you do that?
Well,
how do they do that, rather? Not how do you do that? How do they figure this out?
I think we communicate on what we do. For example, in our group, I think one of the things that have helped us tremendously is some of the business processes we have adopted. We use EVA as a major financial metric.
Turns to it, yeah.
Yes, we decided on that many years ago when it was soon after Joel Stern. I met Joel Stern for the first time. It has helped us tremendously as a financial metric that leads to very good success. But most importantly, we have strongly used improvements in EVA in our various businesses across the board for major variable remuneration programs for a large part of our workforce. We have some of the largest ratios of variable remuneration to fixed remuneration. That has helped tremendously. Not just as an incentive. One thinks of these sort of things as working very well as an incentive. They do. But it has helped teamwork very considerably because we have gone for overall performance of a company or a large part of a company in these measurements, and it has led to strong accent on reduction of capital use.
You went into an industry which is dominated by multinationals as he did, and you competed actually with the same guy who was what Raamdeo calls the leader in your respective industries. If you think of Godrej Consumer as being very strong in soaps, which it was, which it dominant business in the beginning when Godrej Consumer first started out. You started similarly in a way. You competed with major, multinational companies, and over time you built an incredibly successful business. What did you set out for yourself as your sense of purpose, as your mission, as your whatever you want to call it? What drove you in the early years, shortly after Marico was listed in '96? Because then it was no longer an unlisted company. You had made the transition to being listed.
So I think you're mistaken. We have actually made portfolio choices where we believe we have a right to win, as you had already described earlier, where we believe that we can be market leaders,
Where we
can become market leaders, a clear market leader.
Become market leaders, okay.
So if you look at our portfolio of products today, 90% of our total portfolio, we are market leaders.
Right.
So 90% of our sales, we are market leaders. For example, we said that we cannot become leaders in shampoo. But when an opportunity came from Procter & Gamble to sell a small niche shampoo brand, which is anti-lice shampoo, a small market, we said we can become market leaders. It's already a market leader brand. We knew that the market size was small for the MNCs to enter. So we grabbed that opportunity, acquired that brand. But looking back, I think we fight with MNCs today, almost just 5% of our turnover, we must be fighting with MNCs. But when we entered also, we actually entered in categories or segments where we believe that we had a right to win through innovation and through where the competition was weaker. And so we grabbed a lot of share. And the same thing happened in Bangladesh when we went there. The market was 100% local players, and we should have 80% market share in that market.
In a sense, you were looking for markets which weren't that competitive in terms of the presence of very strong players.
One is that, and number two, where you have right to win, where you know or you don't know a certain
That's
category.
Right. So you can be a leader.
So you can actually have some innovation happening or something or a group of capabilities where you think that if you enter that market, you can actually beat the competition.
Right.
So I think that has been the philosophy. And the key thing in our case is portfolio choice. Which is the portfolio you're going to enter? Are you going to become market leader? And now as more and more portfolios are getting occupied, if you have to enter a new product, that's a challenge. So now we said, okay, if not number one, can we be number two?
And the same thinking drove your decision to get into Kaya.
Yes, again, I think we realized that
this is a big
care. It will be very difficult for us to become market leaders. Can we go through a services route,
Right.
Where there was nobody occupying that space in an organized manner. So we said that can we do it through a services route? So I think that's how we've gone into Kaya services, where we are market leaders again.
And do you think, it appears certainly to all of us, and once again I may have got this wrong, but it certainly seems that even in Marico, there's a very strong and distinct corporate culture which has had a tremendously positive impact in the wealth creation that has resulted for Marico shareholders. So would you like to just, tell us a little bit about the key elements of that culture?
So this subject can take almost half an hour for me to speak, but I'll try and sum it up in 5 minutes, I think the key thing is, what are the values which are required, which act as a source of competitive advantage. So you need to identify the right values. But that's the easier part of the culture. You may say innovation, collaboration, openness, trust, whatever else. But after that, how do you create that values into a culture? How do you create a set of behaviors where people go on practicing that value on a daily basis? And that's where the challenge comes in. So the key challenge for the management is how do you reinforce those values on a perpetual basis?
Here are two people, they've done phenomenally well, consumer-facing businesses, consumer products in fact, fast-moving consumer products. You're in financial services, you're an entrepreneur. At a different level from being the author of a wealth creation study, you wear the hat of an entrepreneur. And a very successful one, I should say. I've known you now for 30 years, 29 years. And it's remarkable, the journey you made. Now, how much of this do you think is relevant in the context of a services business? Because you don't have a product to sell. Visibly you don't have a product. They have a product. I go to the shelf, I pick up, there's that familiar blue bottle, Parachute. I know that the packaging is tamper-proof. I go, same story, I buy, soap. I know that Synthol stands for something. So for donkey's years, it's been in my mind. But how do you do that? This idea of convincing the consumer that you're going to do something that creates value for him and building an organization around that. How do you do that in financial services? And what have been your thoughts and experiences?
So since you mentioned the framework, I started thinking on that. So in 87 itself, when we started, 2 bosses, 1 PM, 0 capital, Motilal Oswal. So at that time itself, on the back of the card, we had written what is the mission of the company.
Right.
And even till today, the mission fundamentally in my mind remains same, to help people make money in the stock market worldwide. That was a fundamental call. So, and since that, if you help people make money in the market, they will take care of us.
Right.
Whether brokerage is 1%, 5%, 5 basis point or 2 basis point. Fundamentally, if you help the other side, they will help us. So that was the basic purpose, because I thought in 87, between me and Moti, that we have some edge. Because that time market was the first thing, it was seller's market. Whenever you build a business, you have to build in a seller's market. Because then you're a small guy, you'll flow somewhere, nobody will get hurt. Okay. Second, there was no professionalism at that point of time. I mean, being a chartered accountant and you were among the first customer. More particularly, I was more proud of your dad being my customer. So to get Professor Bhattacharya as my customer was a big pride, and I was scared also to talk to him. So to bring that professionalism and bringing the integrity and research, twin pillars of this company, just the research and integrity, in a business which is not known for neither for research nor for integrity, least for the integrity at that point of time. So these are the value systems we brought right from the beginning.
You haven't mentioned it, but you're obviously in sync, and I think therefore this is a theism of what the two of them said, which is absolutely right. This passion for profitable growth. And as Mr. Mariwala put it, the time horizon is not what drives that passion for growth. It's the quality of that growth, the sustainability of that growth, that the returns, if you got the first two right, the returns will certainly come through. And you can see signs of that for people who are looking at MOFSL as a business. I mean, an amazing thing that they've done is they've got into housing finance. It's not something that you easily think about. But this is one of India's most attractive sectors as an opportunity, as a business opportunity, very profitable, but it takes a hell of a long time to build a beachhead. So I think that's an illustration of this idea that they've spoken about, that you need to build continuously, seek growth which is profitable, sustainable, and which will pay off over the long haul.
But one thing which you started with, from these gentlemen, we must try to understand what should we look from outside as analysts to figure out these companies. The next Godrej, next Marico.
So I'm going to ask them something.
So because this is a growing, we have seen the largest segment of the wealth creator is consumer. And we have seen just the start of the consumerism in India. In next 10-15 years...
I think it's a tragedy that Godrej and Boyce isn't listed. I'd be provocative enough to say that. It would be a tremendous wealth creator. I don't think it's consumer.
Let's not get diverted.
Yeah.
Let's get this right. How should we identify the next Marico or Godrej consumer?
That's right. So I think that's the challenge.
What questions they will ask? What traits they will see when they are looking at those companies?
So I think one of the big things which typically analysts don't focus on or investors don't focus on, which I think is a huge element of companies going from smaller size companies to great companies, is the people that they have.